first two sons born to Adam and Eve after their creation. I came across the story that one day Adam and his boys, Cain and Abel, were out for a walk and taking a hike and looking around, exploring, and they came upon where the Garden of Eden used to be, and one of the boys said to Adam, "Hey, Dad, what's this place?" And Adam responded, "Guys, this is where your mother ate us out of the house at home." There's your other corny preacher joke for this series. But anyway, Cain and Abel were the first two sons born to Adam and Eve, and unfortunately, Cain and Abel is not really a super happy story because this is the first place that the first murder, the first death that took place in the Bible, in Genesis. Adam and Eve may have brought death into the world, but unfortunately one of their own sons became the first one to speed up the process as he killed his brother. And we're going to talk about that this morning. And I just got a little bit of timeline. I'm not going to spend time like I did last week reading all of these, but you can certainly follow along, look at these in your Bible later on, or something like that. But the timeline of Cain and Abel and their story begins in Genesis chapter 4, beginning with verse 1, and then goes over throughout that chapter as far as we see the account of it and what happened. The first part there of Genesis chapter 4, in the first couple of verses, is we see that Adam and Eve had two sons, and they gave birth to an older one, Cain, and a younger one, Abel. And then the next thing, the story skips several years, and all of a sudden Cain and Abel are a little bit older, and they're offering, they're giving offerings to God. Now Cain is a farmer and works the land, and so he gives God an offering of fruits and vegetables, and Abel gives an offering of animal, the best pieces and fats of an animal he offers to God. And God is happy with Abel's offering, but he's not happy with Cain's offering. And so it doesn't really go into a lot of details of that. There's a lot of theories and explanations about that. And I may talk about that here in a little bit. But, you know, obviously Cain was angry that God didn't accept his offering to him. And so not only did he get angry, but he got so mad at his brother that God accepted his brother's offering, that he decided to commit murder. In the next part of chapter 4 there. And Cain goes to his brother Abel and asks him, "Hey, come out to the field with me." And then when he takes him out to the field, he kills him. And then a little bit later, here comes God saying, "Hey, where's your brother at? You know, Cain, where's this is the second time God's come along acting like he don't know what's going on, but he really does. He did it in the garden when Adam and Eve hid because they were naked and afraid. Here he comes to Cain and says, "Hey, where's your brother at?" And he says, the famous, "Am I my brother's keeper?" You know, like, hey, it's not my responsibility. But God was like, hey, I can hear his blood crying from the ground. You know, he knew what happened. He knew that Cain murdered him. And then finally we see once again, there's consequences for sin. And God places a curse upon Cain because of his act of sin and his act of murder in the last part of that. So that's kind of the Cliff Note, or the Jason Note. My name's not Cliff, so I can't give you the Cliff Notes version, but I'll give you the Jason Note version of that story there. But what I really want us to focus on this morning, if you look at your outline in the bulletin, or you want to follow along the scriptures, I really want us to look at what can we learn from this story. You know, last week we talked about Adam and Eve and what we can learn from their account, how God created us in His image, and He created us for relationship, and how we can't hide from God when we sin, and that there's consequences. And so we kind of see a similar account here this morning of Cain and Abel. But the first thing I want us to learn from this story is we need to offer God what He desires. And again, the issue with the issue with Cain and Abel was the heart of the person offering the gift. And, you could read this account and not really understand what it means, but I want us to look at this in verses 3 through 5 of Cain's offering. But I want us to think about offering God what He desires. It says, in the course of time, Cain brought some of the fruits of the soil as an offering to the Lord. And Abel also brought an offering, fat portions from some of the firstborn of his flock. The Lord looked with favor on Abel and his offering, but on Cain and his offering he did not look with favor. So Cain was very angry, and his face was downcast. Downcast, is that another way to say he was pouting? Or he had a sad face? I don't know what you want to call it, but he wasn't happy with that. But, I don't want to overanalyze this, but, you could look at this on paper and say, well, what's the big deal? They both offered things to God, and God liked Abel's, and God didn't like Cain's. But I think it was in the issue of the worshiper, their attitude towards giving that. Some people believe that it says, Cain just threw some things together. He gave God some of the things that he had there. It says Cain brought some of the fruit of the soil. He just brought some together. And Abel brought the fat portions, the best part of the animals from the firstborn animal. He gave God the best first before he took anything for himself, where scholars believe maybe Cain just threw together some stuff he had. Some people also believe it has to do with the blood. That the people gave animals to God, gave their blood, which later on was symbolized when Jesus shed his blood for our sins. He became our sacrificial lamb. So, there's lots of ways you can look at this. But the point I want us to get is we need to offer God what he desires and give him our best, and not give him what's left over, and not let our worship be an afterthought, which is something that I think happens to all of us here. I believe this has to do with Cain's heart and Cain's motives. He didn't have the same heart and attitude that Abel had. Was it that Abel brought the best portions and Cain did not? We don't know the situation. The writer of Genesis doesn't go into these details, but I believe that God knew their hearts and their motives, and so he wasn't pleased with what Cain offered, because Cain didn't have a heart for God, and Abel did, and God wanted the right offering. The New Testament even talks about this offering in Hebrews when discussing, there's a section in Hebrews chapter 11 where they're talking about the Hebrew writers giving examples of different people in the past and their faith. And in one section of that, in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 4, he talks about Abel. He says, by faith Abel brought God a better offering than Cain did. By faith he was commended as righteous when God spoke well of his offerings, and by faith Abel still speaks even though he is dead. So the Hebrew writer gives an example of Abel being someone who brought God a better offering than Cain, and it was his faith, that made him righteous. And so that's why I tend to believe that Abel had his heart in the right place, and he was offering God his best, while Cain was not doing that. And obviously we can see by his actions later on that he didn't have a heart in the right place, and he had ill motives. And so I believe this tells me and you today that God wants our heart. He wants us to worship him sincerely. He doesn't want our worship to be fake. He doesn't want our sacrifices to be superficial. He doesn't want us to just go through the motions. He desires us to have a heart that's right with him. And so I believe today, we offer God, we don't have to offer animals and these types of things like they did in the Old Testament, but we offer God other things. We offer God our time. We offer God our attention. We offer God our service, using the gifts that he gives us. There's lots of ways that we can offer ourselves in our worship to God. And God wants what's best, not what's left over. Or he doesn't want you to do things. A lot of people come to church out of obligation. They think if they come here for an hour on Sunday, they can check that off. They did their religious duty for the week, and they can go on about their lives. But that's not how God works. We already understand God created us because he wants a relationship with us. So that means that when you're in a relationship, you're in a day-to-day relationship with someone. You're not in and out of a relationship with someone. It's not just I have a relationship with you for an hour on Sunday and I go on. So God wants our best. And whatever that means for me and you, maybe it means our study and reading of Scripture. Maybe it includes our involvement in things at church. It can mean lots of different things. But God definitely wants us to offer him our best. God doesn't want us to give our best to our workplace and then just give him the scraps. He doesn't want us to give our best to our earthly relationships and then just give him the leftovers. So we need to find ways that we can give God our best. But again, it begins with our heart and our attitudes. And we obviously see that Cain did not have the right attitude and the right heart. Which brings me to my next point. Don't let your anger turn to sin. And that's exactly what happened with Cain. Cain's offering wasn't accepted. But not only was his not accepted, but God accepted his brother. So there's twofold problem there. Cain didn't get accepted by God, so he got rejected. But then his brother gets accepted, which makes it twice as bad in his eyes. That not only was God not pleased with my offering, but he likes my brothers. Now, we all know about sibling rivalry, and I'm sure some of you have, like me and my sister's close in age. We're only about 18, 19 months apart. We were only a grade apart. And so sometimes in our families, we get in these sibling rivalries with our brothers and sisters. Mom likes you better, Dad likes you better. You get by with everything, and I get in trouble for everything. We go through these sibling rivalries, and so we see the first sibling rivalry already. That Cain is angry because his brother, God was pleased with his brother, not him. Look at verses 5 and 6. But on Cain and his offering, he did not look with favor, so Cain was very angry, and his face was downcast. Then the Lord said to Cain, "Why are you angry? Why is your face downcast?" So obviously God didn't think Cain had any right to be angry. He really was asking, why are you angry? Why are you looking so upset with things? Obviously, Cain is, I hate to admit this, but I'm probably a lot like Cain. I wear my feelings out on my sleeve. Some of you, if I'm in a bad mood, it's hard for me to pretend I'm not in a bad mood. Now, some of you are good fakers. I've said this about my wife before. You're up here today. I said I could slap Cheryl in a parking lot. And she'd come in, "Hey, how's it going, everybody? Good to see you." Whereas if she slapped me in a parking lot, I would have come in here punching walls and kicking stuff or whatever. I don't do a very good job of hiding my emotions. And I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. Sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes that's a bad thing, depending on how we control our emotions. But obviously, Cain was someone who you could not only know he was angry, but you could see that he was angry by his facial expressions. And so he, unfortunately, let that anger build. And we know that's how anger is, isn't it? If we allow it control in our lives, and here's the thing we forget sometimes, that we don't realize we have control over how we feel and the things we think about, the things we focus on. That's why anger leads to sin, because if we dwell on that anger and don't let go of that anger or don't process it correctly, then it's going to lead to sin. That's why in Ephesians chapter 4, verse 26, Paul told the Ephesians, "In your anger, do not sin. Do not let the sun go down while you're still angry." So first of all, he's not saying it's not a sin to be angry. We're all going to get angry, but in your anger, do not sin. In other words, don't let anger fester. He says, don't even let the sun go down while you're still angry. In other words, you need to go ahead and deal with it today before this day's over with, or if you take it into tomorrow, it's going to probably have a negative consequence, or something bad's going to happen. So we need to be careful that we don't let our anger turn to sin. We all have a right to get angry. There's nothing wrong with getting angry. There are things that should make us angry. Obviously our government should make us angry. Our politicians should make us angry. The way people are treated in this world should make us angry. There's lots of injustices and things that go on in this world that should make us angry. But we cannot let that anger turn to sin. And anytime we have unrighteous anger, or we let that sin dwell, it's going to turn into something else. Anger doesn't stay anger. It turns into resentment, bitterness, rage, jealousy. You just name on and on, all the adjectives you want. Anger that is not treated and dealt with in a spiritual way, in a proper way, is going to turn into sin every time, and it's going to lead us away from God, not closer to Him. So we need to take steps. When you're angry, you have to learn to forgive. You have to learn to take it to God and ask God to help you deal with your anger. And again, we can't control how other people act. We can't control how other people behave, but we can control what we do and what we say and how we feel. We can learn to and I'm not saying that's an easy, it's difficult to let go of things. It's difficult, our natural tendency is to lash back at somebody or retaliate or seek revenge or explode. And we've got things like that in our lives. When we get angry and we say things we don't mean, or we do something physically we wouldn't normally do, and all these things can happen if we don't deal with that anger. But I want to encourage you to not let your anger turn to sin. Whether that's taking it to God in prayer and asking for God to help you deal with your feelings and emotions at that time, whether it's learning to let go of it and giving it to God, which is what we should all do. I believe a good spiritual discipline in all Christians' life is learning to forgive. And remember, forgiving is not about letting that person off the hook or whatever it is that's making you mad. Forgiving, sometimes it might be forgiving that place you work for, it might be forgiving the church that hurt you, it might be forgiving whoever it is or whatever it is. You're letting go. Forgiveness is about you releasing it from your life and giving it to God and letting God deal with it. And believe me, God can do a lot more with things than we can. God is the God of justice. God is the God of vengeance. I would much rather God punish somebody than me in my feeble attempts. And so we have to learn to let God deal with people and have confidence. God's going to deal with them. He's not going to let them off the hook. It doesn't matter if they ever say they're sorry. It doesn't matter if they ever acknowledge what they did wrong. God will deal with them. And we need to trust in that and let that anger go so that we do not sin. Which leads me to my third point. We need to do what is right. Do what is right, not what is easy. It's not always easy to do the right thing, is it? And unfortunately, Cain chose what was wrong. He didn't choose what is right. And we pick up the story here in the next part. It says in verse 7, if you do what is right, will it not be accepted? So God tells Cain before he even kills his brother, even before he even thinks about murdering Abel, he tells Cain, he's giving him an opportunity to do the right thing. He says, if you do what is right, will it not be accepted? So obviously we know that Cain's offering of fruits and vegetables or whatever he gave wasn't right, whether that's because he gave with a sour attitude or a bad attitude, or whether he just threw some stuff together and said, here you go. I mean, like you do when you forget to buy a present for someone, or you do when you forget to buy, how many, I'll tell you, this year, we had a ton of kids for Halloween, and I went to Sam's and bought 2 big bags of candy, and we ran out of that stuff. And so I was literally raiding our cupboard for some little packs of gummy fruit and whatever I could find to scramble together. So the last 20 kids that came to our house was just getting scraps out of our house, whatever we had left. What am I doing with a shoe? No, I didn't get that. We had some a candy dish that had some candy in it and some stuff in the cupboard. So I literally gave my last piece of candy to the last kid. But they were just getting what I could scrape up at that point because they weren't getting the good stuff. Maybe I was a little bit too liberal when I first started handing out candy. I didn't know I was going to have all these kids. But the point is, that's sometimes how we treat God. We don't give him what's right. We just give him what we got left. You know what I mean? Because we've already allowed the world to suck the energy out of us or whatever. But God gives Cain a chance to do the right thing. He says, if you do the right thing, will it not be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. We understand that that's how sin works. Sin's not taking a vacation. The devil's not going to give you a day off. He's always crouching at the door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it. You see where we have control? We act like we can't help things, I don't know why I lose my temper. That's just how I am. Or I don't know why I get mad and say this or do this. But God's telling us you have an opportunity to control it. You must not let it rule over you. So you do have a choice. Don't cop out and say you don't have a choice, you can't control yourself. You can't control yourself because you've never made an effort. You never disciplined yourself. You never made the effort to practice and pray and have God help you through those things. But if it desires to have you, you must not let it roll over it. Now, Cain said to his brother Abel, let's go out to the field. And while they were there in the field, Cain attacked his brother Abel and killed him. So obviously, Cain ignored what God had to say. And believe me, if I was going to take advice from anybody, if God was giving me advice, I would probably take advice from him. But Cain didn't. He'd already made up his mind. All he could focus on was, God rejected me. He took my stupid younger brother Abel's. I never liked that jerk anyway. And he went out there and killed him out in the field. And that is what happened when you allow sin to rule in your life and take control of it. But, I firmly believe, and this is just my opinion, I believe from the very beginning Cain had a bad attitude. He just had a bad heart. He wasn't thinking about God. He was thinking about himself, and his attitude was in the wrong place. And he took out his anger on his brother who was innocent. It wasn't Abel's fault that Cain's offering wasn't accepted. He obeyed God and did what was right in God's eyes, and God blessed him for it. And Cain punished him because he took out his anger on his brother, which is what we do a lot of times, don't we? We blame our kids, we blame our spouse, we blame our parents, for all of, people do this. Listen, I spent a year as a chaplain in a prison. I heard a lot, I heard a lot of sob stories, that somebody didn't get enough hugs, just because your mom didn't hug you didn't mean you had to go around robbing banks. You know what I mean? I mean, people come up with all kinds of stories. They want to blame people for how they turn out. But the truth is, I'm not knocking people who grew up in bad homes, but I've also known a lot of people who grew up in bad situations that righted that wrong. They broke that cycle. They did it despite their circumstances. So don't ever use that as an excuse, but we do that sometimes, don't we? We blame other people for things that happen in our lives, and we don't ever accept responsibility for ourselves. And we take it out on innocent people. And unfortunately, that's what Abel was a part of. His brother took out his anger and his faults on his own brother. I like how John said these words in 1 John chapter 3, verse 10. He says, "This is how we know who the children of God are and who the children of the devil are. Anyone who does not do what is right is not God's child, nor is anyone who does not love their brother and sister." Listen, ever since the church was established, there's been people in churches who, even though they came to church every week, they were part of that church, that they didn't have, their heart wasn't in the right place. They had, they had some type of ulterior motives, not interior motives, but that could be interior as well. That's always been around, because it doesn't matter, that's why going to church doesn't save you. That's why calling yourself a Christian doesn't save you. That's why getting baptized doesn't save you if we are not ultimately obedient to God and strive to live for Him and have the right attitude and our hearts in the right place. And ultimately, it's down to, I've talked about this before, about the fruit our lives produce. And John says it pretty clear. If you don't do what's right, then you're not a child of God. And anyone who does not love their brother and sister. Obviously, Cain didn't do what was right. He didn't love his brother, or he would have murdered him. And so it's important for us to understand that we always need to strive to do what is right. Even if we don't always get our way, even if we're not treated fairly, we always want to do the right thing. The right thing is always the right thing to do if we want to honor God. And again, we can't hide from God. All right, I know there's some chubby kids out there that try to play hide and seek. You know what I mean? You're on a skinny tree there. At this point in my life, I'd probably have to hide behind a redwood or something, a large tree. But, I mean, this picture's silly, but that's the truth. That's how we try to hide from God. God is all-knowing. God is all-powerful. God is everywhere. God's ever-present. He's all the omnis. Omniscient, omnipotent, and whatever the other omni, Dodge omni, whatever the other one was. But the point is, God is everywhere all the time. And God knows everything. God created us, so He knows things. We're not fooling God. God knows, unfortunately, He knows our secret thoughts, our secret things that's in our head that no one else knows about. God knows things that we do. We saw from the very beginning, Adam and Eve couldn't hide from God. And now we got Cain trying to hide from God. But you can't hide from God. God knows everything. Verse 9, then the Lord said to Cain, "Where is your brother Abel?" I love this. I love this because how many of us parents have known our kid did something and we're going to call them out on it, but we're going to see if they'll tell the truth first. "I don't know," he replied. "Am I my brother's keeper?" We'd be like, "Is it my day to watch him?" That's what, you've been there? Mom would ask something. I'm not in charge of watching my sister. The Lord said, "What have you done? Listen, your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground." God already knew the answer. He already knew Cain's heart. He already knew his motives. He already knew that he had murdered his brother and tried to hide it, and tried to hide from God. And that's the reality. We can't hide from God. God already knows the answers. He already knows our heart. We can come to church on Sunday mornings and put on our Sunday best. We can smile at everybody, but God knows our hearts. He knows when we're struggling. He knows when we have a bad attitude. He knows when we're being childish. He knows when we're being angry. And God knows everything about us. He created us. He wouldn't be much of a God if He didn't know everything about us. Now, we can look at that as a bad thing or a good thing, But the truth is, I look at it as a good thing because that means God will understand how I'm feeling or what I'm going through. God understands my struggle. And if I will turn to Him and allow Him to help me, He will give me the things I need to overcome those things. He will help me do the right thing. He'll help me have the right attitude. He'll help me do whatever it is. But when we try to do it on our own and then try to hide it from God, we're going to fail 100% of the time. We're always going to get caught. And we're always going to, the funny thing is, when we do something wrong, we try to cover it up, don't we? We try to, I don't know if you did this as a, you try to do something. I'll tell this funny story. We were talking about the last time my parents were here. A few years ago, we were watching, my parents went somewhere and we were watching my dad's dog, Max. And that Sunday, we went to church and we came back, and Max had left a little present in the hallway. He had pooped in the hallway. Can I say pooped from the pulpit? I don't know. But anyway, I did. But the funny thing was, Max took one of his toys and covered up the poop. So I came in the hallway, I saw that toy laying in the hallway, I picked it up, and there's a present underneath of it. So I was joking with my dad. I said, at least he was courteous. He at least tried to cover it up, make sure we didn't see it. But that's what he did. I thought that was hilarious that he did that. But in a more sad way, that's kind of what we try to do with things. We do a bunch of poo in our lives, and then we try to cover it up with lies or deception or blame shifting or whatever it is. But the truth is, we can't hide things from God. It's that old saying, we're just trying to put a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. I mean, we're not doing anything, we're not fixing anything, and we certainly can't hide from God. Jeremiah said in verse 24, chapter 23, "Who can hide in secret places so that I cannot see them, declares the Lord? Do not I fill heaven and earth, declares the Lord?" I mean, the Lord was telling Jeremiah, there's nowhere nobody can go. Matter of fact, there's other scriptures that talk about you can go to the deepest ocean, to the tallest mountain. There's nowhere you can't go to get away from God. But to me, that's a good thing, because that means no matter where you go, no matter how big the valley is, no matter what situation you're in, God is always there with you. So to me, that's a good thing, that God's always with us. Yeah, we don't want God there to see it when we mess up or when we fall short, but the truth is, we can't learn from those things and we can't grow from those things if we don't allow God to come in our lives and work. Which brings me to my final thought this morning, is sin will affect you deeply. We already saw the consequences of Adam and Eve. You women got hurt when you had babies because of her, and we got to go out there and toil in the garden and work and do labor and deal with thorns and thistles. I mean, all these different things happen in the world because of the consequences of sin. And we certainly know the consequences of sin in our life. I would not be the first person, I'll readily admit, I've lost friendships and relationships because of my own shortcomings. Sometimes in other people's lives, those things have been affected. I mean, there's consequences to our sins depending on the severity of them. Now, sin is sin. Now, I'm not trying to label sin more worse than other, but the consequences are definitely different depending on how we sin and what we do and how rebellious we are. But sin does affect us deeply. Even though God has forgiven me, and even though I've tried to make things right in my life, the consequences don't always go away in our lives, and we still have to deal with consequences in our lives, sometimes even later down the road. And that's just part of the natural consequence of life. But the key I want us to understand is what happens here to Cain. God said in verse 11, "Now you are under a curse and driven from the ground, which opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you work the ground, it will no longer yield its crops for you. You will be a restless wanderer on the earth." Obviously, Cain loved being a farmer, and he loved growing things. And the one thing that he loved and was passionate about, God just took away from him. He says, "You're not going to be able to yield any crops anymore. You can plant stuff, but it ain't going to grow." And he obviously lost his green thumb. And that was his punishment. Not only that, you're going to be a restless wanderer on the earth. You're never going to feel settled. Now, I didn't include this in today's text, but if you read on in Genesis chapter 4, I encourage you to do that. Cain's like, "Oh, that's more than I can bear." People, he just goes on complaining to God, which is what we do, don't we? We try to get out of the consequences. But the truth is, God, sin is a curse, and the consequences of sin is a natural curse on our lives. I mean, I don't understand how we can do bad things and wrong things with wrong motives and think that God is not going to, that God's just going to ignore that and let it go by. He is going to do that, and He's going to hit us in things we hurt. Cain lost something he enjoyed. He lost his livelihood. His passion was taken away because of his own sinful attitude and wrongdoing. And not only that, he's never going to be settled or content. And God doesn't mess around with giving Cain consequences. God didn't say, "Well, that happens sometimes, Cain," and gave him a little punch on it. God just gets dragged and say, "Well, you're under a curse now." You know, he doesn't beat around the bush. He doesn't mince words. That doesn't mean that God doesn't love Cain, but he's just saying, hey, you know, you committed, not only was your offering bad, but you did something even worse. You killed your brother, who was innocent. Which kind of reminds us a little bit about what happened to Jesus. Jesus was innocent. His blood was shed by his own people, was it not? The people who should have been wanting a Messiah and expecting a Messiah and read about the Messiah and been taught about the Messiah for centuries and centuries, he was finally there and they didn't even recognize him and they killed him. Now, I know that was all part of God's plan, but you know, there's lots of, everything in the Bible, you see a lot of parallels. You see a lot of things that God uses and God teaches us through the past and through the things that go on, because God always has a plan for everything. But we see, I want us to take away this, understand this morning, that when we sin and fall short, especially when we don't seek forgiveness, especially when we don't try to make things right with God, you know, there's going to be consequences. And even here, you know, it's kind of like this, you know, if you go to your kids and ask them what they did wrong and they admit what they did wrong, you're probably going to still punish them, but the punishment's going to be less severe than if they would lie to you or blame someone else. You know, they're still going to be punished, but it's not going to be as bad. And I kind of look at, you know, God is still going to, if I do something wrong, God's not just going to let me off the hook. I'm still going to be punished, but I believe it goes a lot farther with God when we admit our sin and we repent, we turn back to Him. You know, God's consequences may not be as severe. But anyway, that's all up to God. God's God. He's in charge. You know, He can do what He wants with me or with anyone. But we don't want to be like Cain, and Cain suffered some deep consequences for his life. John talked about Cain in 1 John chapter 3, verse 12. He says, do not be like Cain, who belonged to the evil one and murdered his brother. And why did he murder him? Because his own actions were evil and his brothers were righteous. I mean, John lets us in. Obviously, John had a little bit of inside information probably from Jesus when he was with him. And he's telling the Christians that he's writing to, we don't need to have the attitude of Cain. Cain belonged to the evil one. He murdered his brother. His actions were evil. But I think it's interesting that he says not only were his actions evil, but he murdered his brother because his brothers were righteous. I saw a quote this week, and I wish I could remember it, because it talked about, I don't remember who said it, but it was basically saying, you know, people who live in the light shouldn't be afraid of the dark. People in the dark are afraid of the, people who live in the dark are afraid of the light. But they were applying it to Christians, you know. So being, you know, God is light, and God wants us to be the light of the world, and He's the light of the world. He wants us to live in the light, not live in darkness. But really, you know, we think about that sometimes, you know, we're afraid of the dark. But really, the people who are in the dark are afraid of the light because it exposes their hearts, their motives, their sin, whatever. Abel was innocent, and his brother killed him because he was evil, and Abel was righteous. And I don't know why the world works that way, but it seems that's what evil does. Evil attacks the righteous. Satan attacks us when we're trying to live for God. We're trying to live the right way, do the right thing. Satan's not going to bother anybody that's not growing in their faith, because you're already doing his job for him. If you're not a threat to Satan, then he doesn't need to bother you. But if you're trying to grow your faith, you're trying to live for God, you're trying to be more like Christ, you're trying to grow your faith, Satan will attack you. He will tempt you. He will do all kinds of things to change your attitude, your motives, to get you off track again. And we need to be careful of that and watch those things in our life. This morning, as we've shared the story of Cain and Abel, I hope